I would like to start our program with the definition of the term goods, which is given in the economy.
In modern economic literature, along with such concepts as products, services, the term goods is also widely used. Goods are divided into three major types. Material goods, these are food products, housing, clothing, household and cultural items, means of transport, communications, health protection, and so on. Social goods, these are provisions of jobs, working conditions, environmental conditions, social security, and so on. Spiritual goods, these are services provided by institutions of non-material production, the sphere of culture. The level of provision of the population, a number of the population, family or one person with all types of goods characterizes their well-being. A common mistake in economic theories is the statement about the direct dependence of well-being on the level of development of productive forces. Due to the limitedness of the Earth's biosphere, at present the productive forces have gone beyond the level of biospherically acceptable development, which leads to irreversible consequences in man's environment. The globe, in its essence, is a cosmic ship for all mankind, and therefore the preservation of the life support systems of the crew members of this ship should be attributed to the first priority good.
Behind the duality of views on the concept of goods, apparently, there stands the duality of the nature of the very needs of man.
You are absolutely right. The duality in the views about the good reflects the duality that takes place in the needs of both one person and groups of people, mankind as a whole. Man's needs are subdivided into demographically conditioned, biospherically acceptable, and degradational parasitic needs. The nature of the needs, the satisfaction of which production is subordinated to, is also conditioned by social nraviousness and arising from it cultural conditions. Among the plurality of needs, there are those the satisfaction of which directly harms consumers or people around them, descendants, and the biosphere. Such needs are called degradational parasitic. They generate a degradational parasitic spectrum of production. There are needs the satisfaction of which does not cause such consequences but contributes to the strengthening of bloodline genetics, a more complete mastery by a person of his genetically determined potential of development. These are demographically conditioned needs that generate a corresponding spectrum of production. At the same time, demographically conditioned needs are predictable in terms of nomenclature and volume for many decades ahead. This makes it possible to plan and prepare the productive forces of society for their complete satisfaction. Degradational parasitic needs are unpredictable, both in terms of the spectrum and in terms of volume. Society is not able to satisfy them in principle because they thoughtlessly follow any caprice of fashion, oriented on unpredictable sensual pleasures without measure. In this race of consumerism, human, material and spiritual, as well as natural resources are pointlessly grinded.
Could you give your view on the concept of resources that you have applied? After all, it is the resources that are the source of all our goods.
Resources, from the French ressource, auxiliary, are the factors of production spent on the production of goods and the provision of services. Resources are subdivided into natural, human, and capital. The totality of all types of resources, material goods, and immaterial wealth, scientific and cultural potential, potential of health, form social wealth. You can have a powerful economic potential, formidable weapons, a large army and special services, but in the absence of your own conception of using these possibilities for the good of your own people, while maintaining a tornado of beer, cigarette, and spiritual corruption of schoolchildren, combined with a humiliating presentation of the history and prospects of your own state, the degradation of cadre potential will happen in 20 to 30 years. Following this, the collapse of industrial economic potential and statehood as a whole is inevitable. Let us also point out one more methodological error in addressing the issues of strengthening non-substantial wealth. In the long run, that state which relies on the capabilities of the entire society in the formation of the cadre base of governance, but not on narrow clans that are degrading at least because of their isolation, is the state that always wins. Expansion of the cadre base of governors into the boundaries of the whole society leads to an increase in the quality of governance, That is why free training schemes of cadres, up to any level of qualification, are socially beneficial. All perestroika research in matters of reforming the education system contradicts this fundamental principle, and therefore undermines the social wealth of Russia. The previously mentioned krematistics, from the Greek krem, possession, is a theory of the accumulation of wealth by any means, with the implementation of laws that justify these means. Therewith, Aristotle emphasized that krematistics is an unnatural teaching, working, in fact, against the effective development and satisfaction of the normal needs of people. In particular, he pointed out that in the art of making a fortune, there is never a limit to achieving an objective, since the objective here is unlimited wealth and the possession of money. All those involved in money circulation strive to increase their capital to infinity.
Now, I would like to turn to the views on social wealth. Is Russia a rich or poor country in your opinion?
Social wealth is understood as the totality of not only natural resources, material goods created by labor, but also immaterial wealth, the level of science, education, culture, the state of health of the people. If we talk about the essential characteristic of the Russian word bogatstvo, wealth, which is not realized by the economy, then it's important to understand that it contains a root connection with the word Bog, God. Wealthy is the one who appreciates the natural environment received from God and the genetic ability to master the potential of the culture of previous generations, immaterial wealth. Man can roll the earth into asphalt, fill it with concrete and metal boxes, but it's impossible to re-receive what God has given. Thanks to this global understanding of the essence of being by our unhurried ancestors, Russia has preserved 60% of the territory in its God-given form, China 20%, the USA 10%. The moment is near when mankind will comprehend that this is the true wealth that it has as a biological species. For the measureless development of wealth with inadequate raviousness is destructive for humanity, which was manifested even in the days of Atlantis that preceded us, and with all obviousness has appeared at the turn of the third millennium. Our country is unique because it has the largest reserves of almost all natural resources without exception. The prognosticable potential of Russia's mineral resources is estimated at $140.2 trillion. These are, first of all, reserves of hydrocarbons, coal, gas, oil, incomparable with other countries and conglomerates of countries, the world's largest deposits of ferrous, non-ferrous and rare metals, diamonds and gold, all types of non-metallic mineral raw materials. It is prognosed that a resident of our country is provided with water resources 5 times higher in relation to the world as a whole, forest resources 14 times, arable land 7 times. The traditions of Buddhism presuppose building an economic and political strategy of a stable statehood proceeding from the interests of the next 7 generations. But even our innumerable natural resources, the areas where they have been discovered, provide our needs for no more than 1 or 2 generations. For their conversion into green dollar paper, we are unlikely to receive recognition from our descendants. The fixed capital of a group of key sectors, industries, construction, agriculture, transport, communications, is estimated at $2,200 billion, with depreciation at 50.5% of the total cost. The economy that has been operating for the last 15 years exclusively in the mode of consuming fixed production capital requires investments in the amount of more than $500 billion for its competitive renewal, followed by annual current recovery of depreciation in the amount of $15 billion. It is curious that the reorientation of annual interest payment to international usurers for an equivalent in cost renewal of production would almost completely solve the task of reproduction of fixed assets. However, the same coincidence can be regarded as a supranational planning of the volume of usurious plundering, proceeding from the maximum possible due to the complete withdrawal of depreciation of fixed assets. The key to ruining this component of Russia's wealth is the exorbitant interest on credit loans, payments on external borrowings, and the destabilization of the agro-industrial complex through a spiral of rising energy prices and tariffs of natural monopolies. In order to hike tariffs to an insane 20%, in the first act of the performance, a level of 35-60% is declared, and then the people are given the opportunity to breathe a sigh of relief. Although it's known from global practice that the maximum allowable jump in tariffs of natural monopolies is 1%. Exceeding this threshold level, for example, in the USA requires a special decision of the Congress, because it's an act of destabilization of all, without exception, links of the national economic complex.
As it is known, even at the level of family wealth, something can accumulate for many decades and then overnight be wasted by careless descendants. Can analogies of such processes be drawn in relation to the situation in the state?
You gave a good example, and the analogy here I think is complete. The state can be ruined in the same way as a family.
Our wealth is periodically eaten up by inflationary processes. What is inflation? An unconditional attribute of our being?
Yes, indeed. Inflation can constantly undermine the foundations of a family, or bring them down at once, as it was at the start of perestroika, when the savings of families that had been forming for decades turned into dust. The views of our team completely coincide with the views of L. Earhart, who maintained that inflation is not a law of development, but the work of fools who run the state. To understand the origins, the essence of the inflation process, it is worth starting with the literal meaning of this word. Inflation is a derivative of the Latin inflatio, translated as extension, expansion. It is this term that provides the keys to understanding the essence of inflationary processes. Spontaneous extension of the money supply through the interest rate without creating use value is the driving force behind inflation. The second pedal of the inflationary process, deliberately provoked in the country, is the mechanism for raising prices for the services of natural monopolies. Energy resources are the bread of the industry. Their rise in price is the driving force behind inflation. Setting a plundering base rate and the corresponding to it level of lending rates to the real sector of production, we often hear references to the inflation rate. In reality, everything happens exactly the opposite. And in these explanations, cause and effect are reversed. This particular thing will instantly reveal for you the purpose of our entire pseudo-patriotic wing, Zhuganov, Glaziev, Zhirinovsky, and so on. This is true. The cat knows whose meat it has eaten. Not a single hint towards the central bank, credit loan interests, and other invisible to their eyes circumstances. Their vocation is demagoguery, the desire to gain political influence and amass capital on the conservation of devastation and on blind social discontent. One day, speaking again on television, the best banker of all times and peoples, V.V. Gerashenko, with a multi-meaningful smile, parried an attempt, as he believes, of the ignorant to ask a question about the causes of inflation. Inflation does not happen only in the graveyard. Let us allow ourselves to doubt the accuracy of this aphorism, which is true only in biblical thieves' stereotypes, when the inflation of the money supply is taken for granted as a source of personal and corporate income. However, history also preserves other stereotypes. Having comprehended and neutralized the schemes of global usurious plundering, J.V. Stalin, ahead of his time, for the first time in the history of mankind, demonstrated the possibilities of non-inflationary economic development, relying on the law of preserving money as a technological environment. As is known, from 1947 to 1953, there was a stable decline in the prices of goods from the demographically conditioned spectrum of consumption. This is exactly how it should be in a statehood that has excluded parasitism. Improving the quality of governance, technological progress must inevitably lead to a stable, systematic decline in prices for products produced by society. At the same time, it is the price current of prices that is the numerical measure of the vector of error of governance towards the national economic complex. The lower the prices, the higher the quality of governance. These criteria should be used to evaluate the ability of ministers of economy and finance for socially useful governance.